Hey everybody and welcome back to the channel. As of me recording this video, Final Destination Bloodlines is about 1 month away. So I decided to rewatch every single Final Destination film, and today I'm going to rank all of the deaths on a tier list. Before I jump into the tier list, just a few things I want to talk about. 1. Please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. When Final Destination Bloodlines hits theaters, I will be seeing the film, and I will be reviewing it here on the channel, and I will revisit this tier list I make today and place in the new deaths. Second, obviously this is going to be filled with spoilers. If you haven't seen the entire Final Destination franchise, please pause this video, go watch the Final Destination franchise for yourself, then come back after you've seen them all. And third, I'm going to be ranking them on the tier list in my personal preference. This is how much I enjoyed the kills. So definitely feel free to sound off in the comments below where you differentiate from me. So, without further ado, let's jump into the tier list. Alright everyone, here is the tier list, and as you can see down here, I have every single person that has died in a Final Destination movie. I've organized these to be in order from Final Destination 1 all the way to Final Destination 5. There is text on each of these images that say how they die, but it's very small for me to fit everything into this view window. So on my other screen, I do have a Word doc pulled up, so I have some notes on how each person died, because I don't remember everyone's names from these movies. So if you see me glance over to the side throughout this video, I'm just checking to see how everyone, what their death was in the film. But to kick things off, we have the original premonition, Flight 180 from Final Destination 1. I think Flight 180 is a good premonition scene. We obviously see some better ones later in the franchise, but for it to be kind of the kickoff to the entire franchise, I think it's solid. I'm going to put the Flight 180 premonition in the B tier. Moving on to the next kill, we have Todd Wagner. He's the one that was in his bathroom, and there's a bunch of Rube Goldberg, events taking place, but he eventually trips and falls and strangles himself on that line. This death, I feel like, is more impactful than Flight 180. This one freaked me out a lot more as a kid when I first saw it, just because there's so much tension building, and these Rube Goldberg kills, if the tension is done to perfection, they can be top tier. And I think kind of this kill, introducing that to the franchise, is almost more enjoyable to me than the premonition scene. So I'm going to put Todd in the A tier. Up next is Terry, and Terry's the one who is kind of screaming at all the characters how she doesn't believe that they're dying in the order they should have on the Flight 180. And then she storms off, and then a bus comes through and just smacks her. I mean, it's a quick jump scare death, but for the Final Destination franchise, what I'm looking for, definitely not the most enjoyable. It's definitely memorable, though. I think I'm definitely going to toss this one in the C tier. I think it's just kind of average. Up next, we have Valerie, and Valerie was the one working in her house, and then a kitchen knife falls and stabs her, and she dies. This is kind of another slower Rube Goldberg one. I don't think it's as effective as the Todd one at all. I'm not even sure if it lives up to the Flight 180 one. I think I'm going to put Valerie's death in the C tier above Terry's. Up next is Billy, and Billy gets decapitated by some car debris when it is hit by a train that is coming towards their vehicle parked on the tracks. It's a very gory death. You see his head doesn't get fully cut off. It's more kind of like cut off at his jaw. It's one that definitely has stuck with me out of this Final Destination 1 film. I think I'm going to put Billy in the B tier right behind Flight 180. Up next is Carter Horton, and he is crushed by that giant cafe sign at the end of the film when the three survivors are eating together. Definitely a good way to send off the first film. I think it's really enjoyable. It's definitely one of the better ones from this film, but I do think I'm going to put it at the back half of the B tier. And finally, we have Alex Browning. He doesn't actually die in Final Destination 1. We see a newspaper article in Final Destination 2 that says he was killed by a falling brick. I don't even remember seeing this in Final Destination 2. When I saw him on the tier list, I had to Google what happened to him. And for there to be no aftermath or anything, just a dumb newspaper article in the Final Destination franchise, that is a massive letdown, especially for someone who was a main character in the first film. So I'm going to put that in the F tier. Alright, and now we're moving on to Final Destination 2, and Final Destination 2 starts with the most well-known premonition scene, in my opinion, and that's Route 23, that massive car pileup that starts with the log falling off the back of the semi and going through someone's windshield. I love this scene. This scene is immaculate. This is my favorite Final Destination film as well, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit more at the end when I rank all 5 of the films quickly. But this is just a wonderful scene, and also this Route 23 premonition is also including after the premonition when the car gets sideswiped and the main character's friends also get killed, so it's just kind of one big package, and I think that entire sequence is one of the greatest in the Final Destination franchise. It might be the best, so I'm saving the S tier for really special scenes, and Route 23 is that. Up next is Evan, and this is our next Rube Goldberg kill. He's the one that's in his apartment, and there's a bunch of water running to like electrical outlets. Things start on fire. He climbs out onto the fire escape, and you think he gets away, but then he trips and falls, and the fire escape ladder goes through his head. I mean, it's a fun build-up. There's a lot of good tension, but I don't think the payoff is good. I mean, sometimes some of these kills are more comedic than others in the Final Destination franchise, but this one didn't feel that way. It just felt kind of dumb in my opinion. It does have some good tension though. I think it is going to go towards the back half of the C category for me though. Up next is Tim Carpenter. He's the younger boy who is getting his teeth worked on at the dentist, and he's getting too much laughing gas pumped into him. You think that's going to get him. Then some like fish from a mobile above him fall in his mouth, and he starts choking. And eventually what happens is him and his mom go outside as the rest of the survivors are trying to warn them, and a giant glass pane falls and crushes him. I really like this kill, mostly because you can tell the filmmakers use practical effects. If you go back and rewatch this kill on YouTube, you can kind of see there's a dummy of him getting smushed by the giant glass pane they dropped. And I appreciate when, filmmakers use practical effects over CGI, which is something this franchise has issues with in some of the later installments. So I am going to put Tim's death at the back half of the A category currently. Up next is his mom, Nora Carpenter, and she gets crushed by the elevator doors after the entire group goes back to an apartment and tries to devise a plan on how they can beat this. Nora's not on board with it. She tries to leave. There's the weird guy with the dummy hook hands, and she freaks out and she ends up getting crushed. Definitely a gory death. Not as memorable as some of these other ones, I think. I think I'm going to put Nora's at the top of the C category. It was just kind of average for me. Up next is Kat Jennings, and when I'm talking about more comedic deaths in this franchise, this is what I'm talking about. She's trapped in the driver's seat of that car, and then some paramedics come with the jaws of life to help get her out, and they're joking around with her, but then the airbag goes off and her head kicks back and it goes through the pipe that was impaled through her car. It is just an insane scene, and I think it was so sudden. I think this is how you do a sudden crazy death better than Terry's, where she just gets hit randomly by a bus. I don't think that's all too enjoyable, but this one is just insane, and I really, really like it. I do think I'm going to put this at the top of the B category. Speaking of insane sudden deaths, around that same time when Kat dies, Rory also dies. There is a barbed wire fence and poles that get launched in the air at him, and they slice right through his body, and you get a close-up of his face, and then it cuts away, and you see the chunks of his body kind of like fall in different directions. I just think this Kat death paired with this Rory death is just a really, really fun sequence, and this is another one of my favorites in the Final Destination franchise, especially for those quick, sudden ones that aren't built up to. I am really close to probably putting this in S tier, but you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to put this one in S tier because it's one that has stuck with me the most, just kind of how sudden it is, how weird and gory that aftermath is. The CGI isn't absolutely terrible there. I think it might be CGI paired with practical effects the way it looks. I haven't watched any behind the scenes things, but I do really enjoy this one, so I think I'm going to put it behind Route 23 in the S tier. Up next is Clear Rivers, and she just gets blown up in the Lakeview Hospital explosion. It's kind of forgettable. I don't really care about it too much. I think I'm going to toss this one down in the D tier. Eugene Dix, he's on the oxygen machine. Same thing with him. He gets burned up in the explosion as well. Uh, I'm tossing that in the D tier as well. Just nothing too inventive for the Final Destination franchise. And finally, at the end of Final Destination 2, we have that barbecue explosion. I think this is another great comedic death and a great send off to Final Destination 2. Especially when his body parts like land on the picnic table they're eating at. It just kind of ends the craziness that is Final Destination 2 in a perfect way. I'm going to toss this towards the back half of the B tier. Up next, we have Final Destination 3, and Final Destination 3 kicks off with the roller coaster Devil's Flight premonition. I really love the idea of this premonition. Unfortunately, I think the shoddy CGI really does not help this film. This film has the same director as Final Destination 1, and he has some great ideas, and I kind of like his direction and his style. But some of the CGI throughout this movie just does not help him at all. Devil's Flight could be an S tier for me, but unfortunately it just doesn't live up to the hype of the idea around it just due to that weird CGI. However, since I do kind of like the overall idea of it, I'm going to put it right behind Flight 180 in the B tier. Up next, we kind of have an all-timer of the Final Destination franchise. That's Ashley and Ashlyn. They're the two that burn to death in the tanning beds that get locked down and stuck together. This really is a fantastic kill because it has that Rube Goldberg building tension, and just a lot of crazy crap happens for them to get locked in the two tanning beds. I also enjoy that shot that transitions from the tanning beds to their coffins at their funeral. That's a really cool shot that you don't see all too often in this franchise. However, I think the Rube Goldberg was a bit too crazy for me personally, but I still really enjoy it. I think I'm going to put this one at the back half of the A tier. Up next is Frankie Cheeks, and he's the one who's sitting in the drive-thru when a truck gets rear-ended and the engine fan goes into the back of his head. This one was another kind of unexpected, out of left field one, because you think the main character is in danger and she avoids death, only to find out Frankie was in the car ahead of them in the drive-thru. Definitely an extremely gory kill. It's a fun one. I think I'm going to put this one probably ahead of Billy. They're both head deaths, but I think Frankie's was just a little bit more enjoyable. Up next is Lewis, and Lewis is the one who doesn't believe any of the premonition stuff that's taking place. He's working out in the gym. There's a bunch of sketchy stuff taking place. He slams some weights above his head, and the two swords come down, but they don't actually hit him, and then he screams, "Yeah, I avoided death." But you realize the two wires been cut, so the weights he put on comes in and clamps on his head. Super sudden, even though it has a lot of sketchy buildup going on around the gym scene. Definitely enjoyable. I think I'm going to have to put this one right above Frankie's in the B tier. Up next is Erin Ulmer. She's working at like the Home Depot type store, and a bunch of stuff falls and she trips and she puts her hand up to her face and a bunch of nails from a nail gun go through her head. This one's fine. We've seen, nail deaths multiple times throughout different horror franchises. I mean, one of my favorites is the 2013 Evil Dead remake, which obviously came after this one. But I just find this one kind of sudden, not all too enjoyable. It's fine. I think I'm going to put this one in the C tier right about here. Up next is Perry, and they are at that festival kind of carnival thing at the end of the film, and she gets a flagpole through the chest and kind of planted into the ground. Once again, not all too great. I honestly think this one can go, towards the end back here, towards Terry in the C tier. Nothing too much to say about that one. And then we have Ian McKinley's death at the end of Final Destination 3, and this is another one that suffers heavily from CGI. There's that giant crane cherry picker arm that comes down and crushes him. It just doesn't look good. I like the idea behind it, kind of like Devil's Flight, but unfortunately Devil's Flight has a lot more going on, where this is just some crappy CGI towards the end of the film. It was kind of a letdown for me. I mean, if this was executed better, it would probably be a B or a C tier, but just because it was the end of the film and it just didn't really work for me, I think I am going to put this one in the D tier. And then we have these three kills at the end. This is Julie, Kevin, and Wendy, and they all die very quickly at the end during that train sequence. One of them like flies out and hits their head against the wall. I think one of them gets run over by the train. Uh, it's a cool ending scene, but these deaths I don't think are all that memorable. Just because that entire sequence is enjoyable, I'm just going to put all of them at the back half of the C tier. But just the deaths in and of themselves aren't all that memorable to me personally, even though the sequence is fun. Up next is Final Destination 4, and this movie is something else. This movie is terrible. You can tell the film was clearly made for that 3D craze of the late 2000s, and a lot of the kills are catered to wearing 3D glasses, so this film is bad. I don't like it at all. And it starts off with the McKinley Speedway, like NASCAR car crash sequence, but it is filled with so much bad CGI, filled with shots that are very clearly catering to the in-theater 3D crowd, if I can talk. It's just not enjoyable. It is the worst premonition scene. There's just not a lot of interesting stuff going on. It's a lot of like buildings collapsing or cars falling on people. I don't care for it. I am going to put this one at the way back half of the C tier. Up next is Nadia, and this is when the group that survives the premonition are all standing outside the racetrack, just kind of coming to grips with what happened, and that race car tire comes flying out of the back and just smokes her in the head. This is a shock kill that I do enjoy, even though that tire was very clearly placed for the 3D crowd once again. It was just such an insane, sudden thing that happened. I really liked it. I'm probably going to put this, right at the back half of the B tier. Up next is Carter Daniels. He's that extremely racist guy that's trying to sneak up on the security guard for the racetrack because he kind of blames him for people dying. And he gets drugged by the tow truck and then it explodes. Pretty boring, in my opinion. Nothing all too interesting. This isn't any more interesting than I think that train sequence was in Final Destination 3, so I'm going to put it back here towards the end of the C tier. Up next is Samantha Lane. She's the one that has the massive Rube Goldberg contraption going on at her hair salon, only for nothing to attack her there, and she pays for her hair getting done. She walks out the front door and a rock gets kicked up by a lawnmower nearby and goes right through her head. This is another one where I feel like the payoff to the Rube Goldberg setup was not all that great. I was hoping for something a lot more interesting going on. This is kind of like the fire escape one. I don't find it comedic at all. I just kind of find it as a massive letdown. The build up to it's okay, so I'm probably going to put it in the C tier. Kind of like middling here, I think would be fine. Alright, and I'm back. I kind of moved my face cam down to the lower right hand corner now so you guys can continue to see all of the tier list rankings. Up next is Andy Cuser. He's the one that is working on cars, and they try to warn him that he's next in line, and he's like, death will come to me when it does, and that CO2 tank comes and hits him under the legs, and he kind of like flies around through the air and smacks into the fence, and his body pieces kind of like push through the fence. I don't think the kill is terrible, but what irritates me about this one is him flying through the air on that CO2 tank is horrendous CGI. It is terrible. And then everything kind of going into the fence is once again just catered to the CGI, or catered to that 3D filming to such an extent that it annoys me. And kind of the body falling apart like this was done so much better in Final Destination 2 with the barbed wire scene. And this kill just kind of pissed me off more than anything. And because it just irritated me so much, I am going to put it down here in the D category. Up next is Hunt. Hunt's that really annoying bro dude that goes to the pool and gets his inside sucked out through the filter. Once again, really cool concept, but you can tell they did not have a big budget for this film, and you don't really see anything happen. He's just kind of struggling at the bottom of the pool for a bit, and then kind of the pool engine filter thing just explodes and a bunch of blood comes out. Very, very much a letdown for how cool this could have been set up. Just, I don't know, it's just nothing. Like, it's so boring. You just kind of see an aftermath. There wasn't any really great build up. This character's annoying as shit. You're happy to see him die, and it's not even really in an interesting way. So I am going to put him at the back half of the D category as well. Up next is Jonathan Groves. He is in the hospital, and the hospital floor floods, and a bathtub falls through, and he gets crushed by it. Um, Once again, just not that interesting. I didn't really care about the build-up. This movie's just not interesting at all, and it's just bad. I can't stand this movie. This wasn't interesting. It's going down here in the D category as well. Up next is George Lanter, who is such a good character in the Final Destination franchise. He is the one who made me really enjoy this film because the acting is terrible in this movie. He is kind of the one standout. And guess what happens to him? He gets hit by a car out of nowhere, just like Final Destination 1. They are repeating deaths in this movie. That is how uninventive they are. Just nothing new. Just rehashing ideas. And because of that, this is going in the F tier. A terrible death for a great character, and a terrible rehash. It is done worse than it is in Final Destination 1. I just hate it. Up next is the Target Theaters, and that is where the two girls are watching the movie, and she gets this feeling something bad is happening, and there's a fire burning behind the scene, or behind this movie screen, and it explodes. I also think this is including the other kind of like premonition moments where the escalator falls apart and they get ripped down by the chain and chewed up by the escalator. Once again, I like the ideas they're doing here. These aren't crappy ideas like the previous two kills were, but the CGI is terrible. The 3D catering is terrible. This is kind of on par with the McKinley Speedway for me. I like the idea, but awful execution though, just terrible. And finally, we have Janet, Lori, and Nick, the three survivors. And this is where they get killed, but it cuts off at the end, starts playing some heavy metal music, and we see them get killed as kind of like a 3D X-ray thing. So we don't even get to see the aftermath. It's all like animated. And I'm just like, come on. This is a Final Destination movie. Show us the semi-truck coming through the coffee shop, just wreaking havoc. But guess what? They didn't have the budget for it. They ran out, so we get to see stupid X-rays, CGI, bone crushing. So dumb. All of these are going in the F tier. Alex still needs to be at the end, though, because that was just a newspaper article, which was stupid. And finally, we are on to Final Destination 5, which was such a great film after watching the shit show that was Final Destination 4. And we get that epic North Bay bridge collapse. Fantastic. It is my second favorite premonition scene behind Route 23, and the North Bay Bridge premonition is going to the top of the A tier. Really, really fun. Unfortunately for the North Bay Bridge premonition, it still does not live up to this next kill, which is a legendary one, and that is Candace. She is the girl doing gymnastics, and the AC is leaking, and there's open electrical wires. That screw falls out, and she's narrowly avoiding stepping on it while doing the balance beam. Then she goes on the high bars, and that poof of smoke gets picked up by the big fan, and she lets go at the wrong time, and her back folds in half. This is amazing tension. The best tension in the entire Final Destination franchise. The best Rube Goldberg kill. That nail just had me like gripping the edge of my seat, even though I've seen that scene a handful of times. It is just fantastic, fantastic. And that is definitely going in the S tier right next to Route 23. Up next is Isaac's death, and he is the one who is kind of a horn dog, and he goes to the Asian massage parlor, and he thinks he's going to get a happy ending, but he ends up getting the old lady, and he gets all of the needles poked into him, and then the room catches on fire, and as he's trying to escape, he falls, gets all the needles pressed into his body, and then the Buddha statue falls off the ledge and crushes his head. Once again, just a super fun scene. This is more of a comedic kill, and I just really enjoyed the build up to it all. As an overall package, really, really fun death. I think this has to go right up next to Todd in the A tier for me. Up next is Olivia, and once again, another great tension building scene. She's the one who goes in to get LASIK eye surgery, and the doctor has to step away, and the machine starts going off, and it starts burning her face and her hand, and then she finally stands up, and she runs around, and she falls off the top of the building, and just gets crushed at the bottom. Just a lot of fun scenes in Final Destination 5. They really understood the assignment. They understood what makes Final Destination fun. And for that, this is another one for me that is going to go towards the back half of the A tier. Up next is Roy, who is that racist worker who doesn't like his boss, and as they're arguing, a giant hook comes down, and you think it's going to hit his boss because he survived the premonition, but instead he avoids death, and Roy gets hooked in the face. It's an okay death. It's more just kind of that shock of the wrong person getting killed, it kind of getting thrown out of order, more than the kill itself. It's alright though. Nothing really to write home about. I think this one can go in front of the two Final Destination 4 premonition scenes. But right after Roy's death, we have Dennis's death, and he's the one who has a tool launched at his face, and it gets lodged like right in his eye socket sideways. Once again, another sudden death. This is one that really caught me off guard, and the makeup and effects done are extremely cool looking. I enjoyed it for the most part. I think this is one, too, that I can toss up here in the C category. Up next is Peter, who dies towards the end of the film. He gets that giant, like, meat hook trident thing stabbed through them in the restaurant. This is kind of where I think Final Destination 5 falls off. It starts off with some absolute banger deaths, but by the end, I'm just kind of like, whatever. This is one that did not do a whole lot for me, and this one is going to be tossed down here in the D category for me. Now we have Molly and Sam, and this is where kind of the first 5 Final Destination franchise storylines come to a complete circle. They get on a plane, we realize it is Flight 180 from Final Destination 1, completing the circle that is these 5 movies. Now, I kind of enjoy these deaths a little bit more than I thought I was going to on a rewatch, mostly because I kind of forgot that they got on Flight 180. It definitely doesn't just live up to the shock of the first movie, but it's done in a way that is a lot better than you would think it would be, since it's calling back to a film that came out, like 15 years prior. I do think I'm going to put these down towards the back half of the C category. They're enjoyable, but nothing too crazy. And then at the end, Nathan Sears, he's kind of the one survivor. You think he made it. He's sitting at a bar, and then all of a sudden, Flight 180 crashes into the bar that he is at, and he dies, which is just a fantastic send-off to the Final Destination franchise to me. I mean, it was for quite some time. It was the perfect way to end the film. It is crazy. It is stupid. It's funny. It really just encompasses what Final Destination is as a whole. So for that, I am probably going to toss this one towards the top of the C category. It's nothing too crazy or memorable, but it just really is a good final kill to what was the final movie in the Final Destination franchise for about 15 years, I'd say. Has it been? Yeah, it's been like 14, 15 years since the last Final Destination film. So I think it was a great send-off for that. So there we have it. Here is every single Final Destination death on a tier list. Please let me know what you think about my rankings in the comments down below. I tried to keep the, upper ranks to kills that really impacted me, so I think only having 3 in the S category is solid for me. And if you want my final rankings on the films themselves, I would say it probably goes Final Destination 2, Final Destination 1, Final Destination 5, then there's probably a small gap, and I would go to Final Destination 3, and then there's a massive Grand Canyon size gap, and then you have Final Destination 4, which is an absolute trash heap. that is a movie that shouldn't be watched unless you just want to see all the films like this. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll kick it over to myself for the outro. I want to thank you for checking out my Final Destination Death tier list. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below, and please drop a like and subscribe to the channel, as the Final Destination's Bloodline review will be coming out very soon once the movie hits theaters. Thank you, and have a good one, everybody.